Thanks, Cathy, for joining us. You work at the Cheeseboard Collective, which is a cooperative business, and so it's a worker-owned company. And yeah, I'm very interested in learning more about it. So one of my first questions is, how does how do you determine compensation?
We pay ourselves hourly, and so everyone gets paid exactly the same amount, whether they started yesterday or they started 50 years ago. Although no one here is still 50 years on, but um, so that wage is the same for everyone. And then when we're done with the year and we do the book, and the profits that we haven't decided to retain for infrastructure, we distribute prorated per hour you work. So I could work 20 hours and you could work 40 hours. We get the same percentage of profits, but you would obviously make more because you work more.
Yes. Okay. Cool.
And there's
Cool.
compensation in other ways too. I
Uh
mean,
huh.
we have a healthcare system where we, offer health insurance and dental insurance, and we have bereavement pay, and we have all kinds of different ways that we help, the worker owner, get live their lives, and so the compensation isn't just simply financial.
Yeah, I saw in the documentary that you guys also gave healthcare benefits as well, which is yeah, that's fantastic.
Healthcare, we have a 401k, we
So
that
do
the
you
chief board
match the
contributes
401k?
to. Pardon me?
Do you do the matching for 401k?
Now we give a certain percentage of profits after the books are done, and that's prorated into everyone's
Oh, wow,
cap,
that's fantastic.
everyone's accounts, their 401 accounts, and you can add your own, you can contribute your own, but it's not a matching system.
Got it. Got it. So how do you determine the hourly wage?
Well, the interesting thing about a cooperative is, you're both the worker owner, so the, all the, and you're the manager as well.
Right,
And you
right.
wear all those hats, and then everything you do then is in dialogue with yourself, basically, right?
Hmm.
So there's only one pie of money, and that money can be divided up any way that the group feels comfortable with. And so if we decide, we look at that, and the wage is this, and the healthcare pieces are that, and all the kinds of things that go into our compensation package. How do we spend that money? We decide that ourselves. And what usually happens is, uh, the money that's divided up to the group, we call the patronage, that comes from profits, uh, is an interesting piece because it's variable,
Yes.
and the wage is not variable. So as long as business is good, yeah, there's not a lot of pressure to increase wage.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got
So,
it.
but the government doesn't like to see the patronage outweigh wage, and so we
Mm.
start to think about in terms of, well, what's the cost of living like now? Are people being able to live, week to week on this paychecks that they're giving that's just wage,
Mm.
um, or do we need to bolster the wage and reduce the patronage? So it's sort of like a balancing act that we have. The thing about it is that patronage is taxed less, and because you don't have an employment tax, you only have a employee tax. Like I would have to pay tax on that money. That's money I earned, and I would pay tax on it. But the business doesn't pay tax on it.
Got it. So the
And since
idea
I'm the
is,
business,
uh-huh.
I'm saving some money. So there's a little bit of an advantage to taking the money in patronage, but there's also
Yes.
disadvantages too, because when you're not paying an employment tax on it, then you're not paying Social Security or Medicare or
Oh, right.
other kinds of things like that. And, as the Social Security is an important piece, and, you don't want to you don't want to starve that either. And the other problem with patronage is that it rises and falls with your fortune, right? Your good or bad fortune. And when fortunes are good, it's really good. And wage is fixed. And the only time you take a wage cut is if you absolutely have to, you know.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I've not seen that. I've been here 25 years, a wage cut. I'm assuming the next year we'll look at the world will look a whole lot different when we look back at our books after the COVID shutdown, because we've not, you know, we closed for 2 full months. So
Wow.
we'll see
Yeah.
what happens with
So you
that.
guys didn't
Um,
switch over like during COVID maybe to delivery, or was it takeout only, or how did you adapt?
we we just closed completely.
Oh wow, okay.
And June 2nd, we opened for walk up front, walk up to the store and order something through the window, basically. And no one's been in the store. We're not serving any hot pizza pies at this time. It's just baked goods, of
Oh.
limited selection,
Okay.
cheese, and partially baked pizza. And then as more people come back to work, we'll add more items that we can, because we can only help so many people in this kind of slow way as they come, and you're
Right.
serving one person at a time.
So
So
have you been?
we're trying to balance all that.
Yeah. Have you been able to take advantage of the government stimulus stuff?
We chose not to take a PPP loan right now. We are deciding to do a different thing that comes around as a tax credit at the other end of it, because the PPP was so, you know, difficult to maneuver. And
Right, because it's for
fortunately,
employees, and if, or I guess, are
it
are
didn't.
people
It was
defined?
fine to.
Uh-huh.
It didn't that we're considered employees. Like, we're getting unemployment, we're getting, you know, the
Okay.
600 federal thing. But the thing was is that we were in a really fairly good position, because there was a group of us that were really worried about earthquakes and then potentially fires. And so we
Mhm.
had already started to reserve.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
You
You
guys
know,
were
we had some
prepared. That's
reserves,
fantastic.
but they're not. You know, they only last so long, and so that's,
Mm.
you know, it's not a cakewalk by any means. But you know, we were able to it, you know, it hit us and hit us hard, but we were at least had some preparation, some pre-planning.
So in those in those moments as a collective, how are you making decisions or problem solving, or how does that play out? Are you guys meeting every month or?
Oh God, we're meeting all the time now. Zoom is like,
Mm.
and then they're difficult. You know, when the whole group, we're almost 70 of us. So
Yeah.
when the whole group meets, this is complicated. We have 2 outside facilitators that help facilitate our meetings. We have a committee system that we've broken up into different groups that are looking at different areas of the business, and we have a steering committee that meets every other day to see what needs to move forward. We're working in very, very restricted pods, so that everybody who's working right now we're only working 2 days a week, and
Right.
we're just trying to keep it very contained.
Mm.
And because we don't, you know, people get, you know, people are worried about their health, we're worried about our customers' health, and all of that. So it's been a interesting challenge.
So how do you guys like vote on things? Is it like kind of like raise your hand, or is it like put a paper in a box, or Google Drive?
Well, Zoom has made like voting a whole easier thing, but we work on a consensus model too. So it's not like just 51% of the people say, let's do this. It has
Right.
to be an agreement in every sense of what that word means. And
Consensus
so
model. Okay.
every voice is listened to, and hopefully we come to some understanding. You don't have to always like it, but if you understand the reason and you're on board, then that's great, you know.
So
Right.
if I could just bring, so you said you have outside facilitators.
Yes, we have outside facilitation
And when did that
firms.
start? Is this something that you, as a collective, you thought would be better during some tense
We
moments, or?
we used to self-facilitate, and we had facilitation training, but it's problematic for us,
Right.
it was problematic because, first of all, that facilitator is a very powerful position.
Yeah.
So you have to remain neutral, and you can't really vote. And so it
Right.
felt like the people that were really good facilitators often ended up, you know, offering to. We would do it in 6-month cycles. They would offer to do the facilitation, but then for 6 months, they're really not participating in the vote or voicing their opinion in any kind of um,
So you like lose
real
the
way. I
resources
mean,
of
you
a
can
really
step,
good person, or that
yeah. So
points and ideas, or that's yeah, okay.
yeah, so we did have this thing where you could step outside your role as a facilitator and you could add to the conversation, but it was never very satisfying. And then we
Mm.
had a problem at one point, and I think that it was just too big of a issue to be on one person's shoulders to facilitate that issue in an objective way,
Was there a
and with
specific problem?
only the skills that we have. So we decided after that it was time to really get a facilitator, and you know what, it's been great.
That's
That's
It is
great.
so
awesome.
Okay.
great
Could you
because
talk
they run
about
the meeting.
the problem that kind of spurred that
I probably
decision?
it's a long time ago, and it was I don't really want to talk about it,
Sure.
but and it worked out just fine. But I think the person who was facilitating at the time was feeling this was was too much responsibility
Okay, yeah.
to
They
to
should let
to
him.
wield that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
like I said, I used to love to do the facilitation, and I was proud that we could do it ourselves. But it is way better to have somebody outside, and then you can participate in the meeting in a much more meaningful way. You're much more focused on like what your really discussion is.
Good point.
So how do you make sure you're including everybody? It seems like it would be a lot for like all the decisions to have everyone make them. Is there a point where like people can make or small groups make their own decisions, or is there any like sort of gray area for that?
Uh, we have moved to a committee system where um, we don't all do we're not a part of every single decision making because there are too many people now. It
Yeah.
Right.
used to be we did all sit together and like
Wow.
decide a lot of the things, but like our buyers are independent decision makers. We
Mm.
have I think we have 13 committees when we're not in COVID. Now we have 113, I think. It feels like it. Uh, you know, the, we have a committee that deals with like evaluations, and there's a committee that deals with hiring, and there's a committee that deals with um, HR issues. Whether
Oh.
HR, both hard HR questions and the soft ones, like the ones that have to do with conflict and the ones that have to do with who's your insurance carrier. So those are two different kinds of HR issues.
And do
And,
people get voted?
we have a big picture committee. We have a
Mm.
bookkeeping task force group. It goes on and on. And
Yeah.
each group within a certain realm has a certain amount of independent agency, and then there's not complete release of decision making. The group has not been happy to do that yet, but I think it's creeping along, and I think it's wonderful to be able to have a voice, but it
Yeah.
starts to become really difficult when there's so many.
In the
You can't really.
documentary,
Pardon me.
in the documentary, there's
Mhm.
rotation of tasks. Is there also rotation between committees, or is it more
Yes.
like okay, wow.
Yes, I mean, we're supposed to be rotating more than we do because just just as you get to know what you're doing, to be rotated off becomes
That can be annoying.
problematic for both
Yeah.
the smooth running,
Yes.
and plus you might find, like it's something that really fits you well. That seems good. But the idea is, you are supposed to rotate. The cheese buyers rotate every few years. We used to have a 3-year rotation process,
Oh
and
wow.
we're in the process of, working on succession planning, and so we really are trying to rotate people into all kinds of jobs because we do so many of our own work, meaning we do our own payroll, and we, you know, for the longest time we did our own like cafe HR, FSA plans, and we just do a ton of stuff ourselves, and so that knowledge has to be. We do our own financial reports, and
Wow.
we just have to figure out how to move those things to the next generation. And so we're working very hard at that. And, and that's changing the way the committees are stacked.
Gotcha. And so how do people decide what committee they want to go to, or is it kind of like a scheduled kind of thing?
90% of the committees are self-determined,
Got
and then
it.
there are a few that are more that like that deal with personnel, for instance. Those committees are more elected because people have to feel comfortable if there's a conflict to go to a
Oh,
certain group.
okay.
So
So
you
it's
just can't
hybrid
have,
style. Okay.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool.
So it works mostly.
Mostly, yeah, I'm sure. Um, so last question. You should it's been about 20 minutes, so you should probably have lots of work to do and all these other things. I was just wondering, how would someone be able to invest in the business, and how does investing work in terms of shares, and if everyone has
So
shares?
we don't have shares, and
Oh,
the
okay.
Cheese Board is a corporation. So
Uh-huh.
it's almost like it is the employer, the you know non this like imaginary entity in a way, right? The Cheese
Mhm.
Board. Um, and we work for the Cheese Board, and we come in, and there's a little bit of a, I would say, just kind of a, uh, like you just put a little bit of skin in the game, and it goes into a virtual account, and you get that money back when you leave, but you don't get shares back when you leave. And I think if
Mhm.
you guys are really thinking about becoming
Interesting.
a cooperative, it you'd have to figure out, at least from where I sit, and I answer a lot of questions about cooperatives, a lot of questions about people who are interested in them, is that the founding members put a lot of work into them,
Right.
and they put the money in and the sweat and then they come to a place where they need to expand and they have members.
Mhm.
And that expansion is where there's problems because, the founding members feel like they want compensation for their work if you're going to join them. We at the Cheese Board have had the most generous founders in the world, and they never felt that they would differentiate themselves from the group. So they did sell the Cheese Board originally to their members for a very small price, just kind of that kind of and then joined the ranks just like everyone else and worked forever. And it's that spirit of generosity and equality that has helped avoid that, the founder's dilemma.
That's
And so
Yeah.
that
amazing.
is my cautionary word to
Thanks for
you.
actually sharing
Is
that. That's
Yeah.
profound actually.
So, sorry, but so for in terms of shares, when the original owners sold the company to the workers, wouldn't that be in terms of like shares or something? Uh,
I don't actually know how they did it. They were hippies.
So are
I
we.
mean, it was
Gotcha.
like
Okay, so they kind of just like, yeah,
1972.
you have
They
this and
were
I have this. It's all
stoned. I don't
good.
know.
I think it was
You know what I'm
equal
saying?
percentage probably just of.
Mm.
They just, they just said, okay. I don't think it was it wasn't, later on it was formalized in a more, really the legal world of having to formalize things.
Right.
But
Ah.
I don't exactly know how they made that early agreement. I should ask. Our founder is still, one of them is still alive. So
Mhm.
anyway, so I think that they just did it. That there was a lot of just doing it
Wow.
in the
Okay.
back in the day. Okay.
I love it. That's incredible.
I don't know if we
So
have time for one last question, but we just wanted to know how you got
Oh
started.
yes, yes,
Yeah, that
yes.
was just
That
one
was actually
thing.
our first. Going to be our first question. I forgot though.
the question is how I got started.
Yeah, how did you
Yeah.
get involved with the collective?
Oh, I moved to Berkeley with my husband,
Uh-huh.
and I was working in restaurants in Philadelphia, and he got a job at Berkeley.
Nice.
And I thought, for the longest time, I might start my own business and have a restaurant. When you come to Berkeley, that's like a restaurant in every corner.
I know.
And I just
Mm.
didn't feel like they needed, where I came from, they needed restaurants. Where came to, we didn't need that anymore. And I started to work for other people in restaurants. And I just came to a point where I just didn't like it anymore. That you're pretty far up, but you're never in the making the really honestly the real decision making.
Right.
And I felt like I was a transplant. And whenever I came into the Cheeseboard, I felt like there was community here. And for me, I just wanted to feel in and of the community.
Yeah.
And I wanted a job that was more, not a job, but sort of a vocation in a way. And so it became this idea that, not only do I have a community of customers that many have become really dear friends over all these years, but I have a community of coworkers that are like the extended family, that I'm away from, and I have them here, and it means everything. And with the idea of that family notion, one shouldn't idealize it too much because families are complicated, and
Right.
you want to keep the peace and you want it to move smooth. All of the things that are families, that's what it is like to be at the Cheeseboard. And but it is a caring and loving community, and one where we look out for each other. And it just seemed like it was where I could hang my hat.
Yeah.
So I've been here for 25 years.
Wow.
Honestly, I think that's
There
such
you
a
go.
great note to leave us with, because that's what the community part is really everything to us. Is we're trying to really figure out how to.
Yeah, I really think
Have
that's
people
the
own
key
this.
to
Yeah.
a lot, like Western civilization, all this stuff, right? Or the way our society
Mhm.
is right now. I think
Mhm.
that's a key factor in what it's lacking. We lack that
Yeah.
element of community, and so
And ownership,
we
yeah.
get everyone's getting depressed, and a lot of people doing opioids and stuff. And I think addiction, all these things, right?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, a big part of that is from lack of community.
Right. Right.
And so
Right. I always felt like you wouldn't run the stop sign if you saw the person on the corner and you knew them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, our world
So
can be
it's kind
smaller
of like
than it
that.
is now, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would encourage you to talk to there are a lot of artist collectives and cooperatives, some that are formal and some that just call themselves collectives.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of information out there. I mean, we're retail, and I don't know what you think you might be doing, but that's,
We're
if
not
I
sure
were you,
either.
that's kind of yeah. You might want to look at something like that.
Cool.
Because it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's that. Yeah, no, thank you so much for
Okay.
that's great
You're welcome.
advice.
Yeah. Thank you,
Good
Cathy,
luck.
so much. Yeah.
Let me know what you're doing when you get further down the line.
All right, Cathy.
And
yeah,
we're when
All
we're
right.
in
give us an
Berkeley,
update.
we'll say hi.
Yes.
Come in and say hi. All righty.
Definitely.
Bye bye.
Bye,
care,
Cathy.
Cathy.
Thank you.